welcome to the Thanksgiving special with the Schlaps, and we also have a wonderful friend, Sean Spicer, and we're going to be talking about his great book, Radical Nation. Sean, thank you for being with us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So, first of all, we had this great cooking session with Larry, which you jumped in. What do you think about the sweet potato casserole? Let's start from there.
It's fantastic. I may or may not take a little home. I think that's more like dessert than a side dish. It was sweet. It was good. It was very tasty.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So what are the big plans for Thanksgiving at the Sean Spicer house?
This year, we have invited everybody.
Everybody?
Well,
what do you mean everybody?
Like immediate family.
Sean, are you thinking
immediate family down? So my mom from Rhode Island, my brother's his family from New York.
How do you define immediate family? How does that work for you?
This is a very sensitive conversation for the cute.
I didn't realize I was touching on it.
Go right ahead. Talk to you about immediate families.
Yes. I'm getting into this whole Cuban thing now.
Is it like a cousin?
I feel like, it's immediate family is brother, sister,
yes,
and their spouses. And their spouses and kids.
Okay.
Like
what's wrong
extended
with that?
family is when you get into cousins and
what are you trying to say, Schlapp?
aunts
No,
and uncles.
I think
So at Christmas we do extended family in Rhode Island, and that includes aunts, uncles, cousins. But for Thanksgiving, it is immediate family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So same tree.
I'm still waiting for what you're going to say right after.
Oh, I just think it's a very interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Now,
Apparently, in this household, it's a much different conversation.
In this book, Radical Nation, you go through these terrible policies that Joe Biden has brought on the world. Before we get to the policies, in your history in politics, could it ever be possible that someone would get the most votes ever to be the president of the United States, be like the top political leader in the country, and be this unpopular in less than a year? It's not possible, is it?
No, but the funny part about this, Matt, and the point I make in the book is that during the campaign, Biden talked about becoming the most progressive president ever, and I think because he had been in Washington for half a century,
nobody believed
No one believed it, exactly. They were like, oh, we
Plus,
know
it was
Joe.
hard to understand him.
Right, and you're also like, what does that mean? Like, there's no way. Like, you've been here a half a century. You've been the moderate, kind of pragmatic guy who likes to make deals. And so it just wasn't believable. But in 10 months, between the people and the policies, I mean, I talk about on day one, 17 executive orders and actions. It was basically like, I'm going to, start the ball rolling right away. So,
and plus, he's not making all these decisions, right?
Well, I mean, there's a series of meetings that I talk about where Republican senators have come to start calling Ron Klain, the White House Chief of Staff, Prime Minister Klain.
Yeah.
But the thing that's interesting to me is Biden understands legacy better than anybody. And what I mean by that is every other president, Republican and Democrat, to some degree has said, if I accomplish what I've laid out to do, that will be my legacy. I will, cut taxes or, have a particular reform that I want done or what have you. Biden, through the people that he's appointing, is basically saying, I want the left to lionize me. I want to become the new FDR because I'm going to appoint all of these people that will check a box with the left, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, etc., where they're checking a box, not that they're the most qualified, not that they're most experienced. And I lay it all out because you have to understand that he's not interested in necessarily accomplishing something.
But do you think, Sean, that he is even tracking that much? Like, do you actually think that he's going through the list and saying, let me put all these progressives here, let me,
I think
do you feel
knows,
like he is really part of that decision-making process, or are they deciding for him, going back to the president and saying, Mr. President, this is what we're going to move forward with?
I mean, who knows? It may be just high-level guidance, and then they're kind of like telling him, oh, see, this furthers your goal, this furthers your goal. But it's happening.
Right.
And so, frankly, at the end of the day, do I really care? I mean, I think to some degree people are spending a lot of time trying to figure out who's making the decisions. I just care that they're getting made. And how do we stop them?
They're getting made.
I know.
The other thing is, I think is interesting about Joe Biden. I think you said that he was the moderate guy that was doing deals. I think the misperception of Joe Biden is he was a nice guy. He was never a nice guy. Ask Clarence Thomas what a nice guy was. He's never really a nice guy.
The funny thing that you bring that up is that these stories behind the scenes are now that he's getting angrier and angrier.
He's always been that guy.
I think the thing that's funny that you bring that up is that the media is so complicit in covering that up.
Right.
That he's got this
temper.
That was my point. And I mean, I met him. I talk about it. When I went there during the Trump transition, he bumps into me in the hall and says, come on down to my office, and sits down and starts regaling me with stories. And very nice. But then you hear behind the scenes, I have this phrase that I say, friends versus roommates. Right? He's the kind of guy you want as a friend, not as a roommate. Because there are people that you want to go hang out with, but you don't necessarily want to live with because they've got a temper or they're messy or whatever. And I think that he's one of those guys that I just didn't realize what a challenging individual he could be to work for.
But not only, he doesn't seem like just such a challenging individual. In the book you talk about Kamala Harris too.
Oh, yeah.
She seems to be a very challenging individual trying to save her image and really doing a terrible job of it.
She might be neither friend nor roommate.
Exactly.
Right. She's citizen.
Yeah.
I think the thing that's interesting about Kamala Harris is two things. One, she was chosen because she checked a box. As I said, she was the first female of color. That's it. So he didn't go out there. He wanted this relationship that he had with Obama.
Right.
But he chose somebody that had been in the Senate for 4 years. She didn't have the worldly relationships, nor the senatorial relationships that Biden had. Mm-hmm. So how do you advise somebody when you have a fraction of the experience that they do? And that's the other thing, is that think about the relationships that vice presidents play to presidents, whether it's Biden to Obama, George H.W. Bush to Reagan, Gore to Clinton. It's these people who come in and say, hey, I've been around the Senate, I've been around government, Pence to Trump, right? I've been a governor, a leadership member of the House of Representatives. And so I can help you navigate Washington and Congress. What does she offer? I mean, seriously, she
offered two things. She offered California, which is the place where they raise all their money.
Yeah, but they already had California.
And she
wasn't very there.
Her claim to fame was really locking people up.
Right.
And that, fortunately, is an issue that is kind of boomerang.
And I talk about
that
it's funny, her record is something that the media will not allow to be addressed. That she was a no-nonsense.
She separated a lot of families.
Yes.
Maybe not at the border, but
she did.
right in California.
Oh, yeah. In fact, there's one instance that I write where this child who had health issues had a truancy issue because of their health issue they couldn't get to school.
Right.
And she didn't care. It was funny what a different Kamala Harris there is now, the one that talks about and preaches about the judicial system and equity and all this. That's not who she was in California.
Sean, does she survive? Does she survive
as
vice president?
Look,
you think that they'll
think
protect her?
Of course they will, because
and
they have to.
And you don't think, will Buttigieg come in and try to steal the spotlight?
I don't think Buttigieg has to. Buttigieg is just sitting back on, let's go. Because no one's going to dump her. She's the first female of color. You couldn't do that. I mean, it's just, whether the White House staff wants to or not, Biden won't let it happen. But Buttigieg is sitting back and drafting. I've said this for months now. He will be the Democratic nominee in 2024. Most of the folks...
Really?
Absolutely. If you look at the boxes...
But that is kind of the same thing. So she takes over eventually, but in the end she can't get the nomination for herself.
No. Look, Matt, she lost.
Right.
She got dismissed early in
1
her
or
own
2%.
Right. But so she dropped out before Iowa. Her own party didn't like her. So why would you think somehow? I mean, everyone scratches their head now going, gosh, she's got a 28% approval rating. I wonder why. It's because she was never liked.
Yeah.
Right.
And suddenly Biden might have put her in this position. That didn't make people like her anymore.
That's right.
And that's the problem is that, but if you look at her record, there's an entire chapter on there. That's the thing, is that people don't know who she really is or where she came from because the media just sort of wants to present her as, oh, she's vice president.
All right, so Sean, where can people get your book?
Anywhere books are sold, Costco, Barnes & Noble. If you go to newsmax.com/23, it'll take you to the Amazon link, SeanSpicer.com. There's a few copies in the Schlapp's house.
There is.
Yeah,
Actually, but Schlapp, we're not done with Sean. We're going to be right back after this commercial break.
Hey everyone, this is Matt Schlapp with CPAC, and it's my privilege to tell you that we've got a very important project that we've just announced, the First Amendment Fund. It's a brand new fund that we've created through our criminal justice reform efforts to raise money to take care of you, Americans who are being canceled and desecrated out there around the country. We know it just happened in Virginia, where parents were called domestic terrorists by the Biden administration, where people who just want to express their political views are canceled left and right. Now we have this terrible specter of a vaccine mandate where you can lose your job or be prevented from going to a restaurant or go to school according to your vaccination status. These are all the things that are happening in this country that are making people realize that America is in a fight to defend the principles that have made her great. If you want to be involved in this important effort, please go to conservative.org, click the link for the First Amendment Fund. please donate to this C3 to help these victims across the country, including those who are just involved in politics, to make sure they have the legal representation they need to be able to live their great American life.
We're back with Sean Spicer. He is Newsmax host of Spicer and Company. Sean, did Larry O'Connor have O'Connor and Company, or did you have Spicer and Company first? Can you please clarify that for our viewers?
I don't even need to clarify it. I didn't know it was a debate. We were very successful well before he stole the idea.
Oh.
But I feel I like helping Larry.
Okay, we all do.
I know. You want to help those that are less fortunate. And especially at Thanksgiving, helping Larry is just my small way of giving back.
Okay, well that clears it up. But let me tell you, we are talking about Sean Spicer's book, Radical Nation, and one of the big areas you discuss is the disgrace of the American media. Now, you were press secretary for the White House under President Trump. You've been doing comms and press for a very long time. What has shifted with the American media today?
So I think the level of advocacy has become much more apparent, that they don't hide it anymore. They say things about promoting things, promoting the talking points. They cover up things, the duplicity, the hypocrisy, the failed policies. That they would at least fake it before, but now the level to which they go out there and advocate for the White House and the Democratic Party and are so viscerally opposed to someone like Donald Trump is so much more apparent than it ever was.
Right.
And I've never, like I said, I've always known that they would fake it, but now it's not. They have no reason to hold back their opinion.
Who's the worst example of this bias in the news media?
I mean, I think there's probably a tie between the Washington Post, the New York Times, and CNN, and it depends on the story and the day. There's some days that some other folks will shock me, but I think they take turns, and it depends on the issue.
So a lot of these people got Pulitzer Prizes
Yeah,
and they get
the
other
Times
prizes.
and the Washington Post.
How come they don't have to return these when it all turns out that it was fake
You know
news?
what? It's a fantastic point, because think about it. If you're an athlete and you dope or you cheat, you get your medals stripped and you give them back, right? These folks, I was there on January 10th at 2 o'clock when Jake Tapper called me and said, I got a story that I want to talk to you about. And we played phone tag for the next, I don't know, whatever it was, couple hours, until they ran excerpts of that dossier, and then BuzzFeed published the entire thing afterwards. And I sat there and said, I can prove demonstrably it's false. I was in the room. I have a security clearance. I was there with President Trump when he got briefed by Comey. My version is backed up publicly by Comey and Clapper, despite some of their other comments.
Yeah.
And yet, CNN, the Washington Post, and the New York
They run
Times,
with it.
they all run with it. And now the Washington Post updates their story, which is journalist lingo for I screwed up, but I don't want to say I screwed up, so I call it an update. But think about this. And Mercy was there for part of this. You've were supportive of it the whole 4 years. How different would the Trump administration have been had we not been answering questions and allegations about Russia every day?
My pushback on you would be is if that hadn't taken off, they would have come up with something else. It was
Fair
just
enough,
an
but
attempt
think
to
about
hog. It was an
fair
attempt to
enough, but
hog
I mean,
tie.
I don't know what you can say. Think about, and you're right,
But
probably
wasn't that completely made up? Just make up something else.
right. But I'm saying that of all the things to make up, to talk about how you conspired with a known adversary to win an election and
Yeah.
then continue that. I mean, that's one of the
And
worst
try to
things you can
impeach the
say
guy,
about
and then try to impeach
Right.
the guy.
So, I mean,
not once, but twice.
But think about
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
that came of
And
that.
they-
Sort of in I'm not a lawyer, but they always talk about the fruit of the poison tree, where you basically once you pull something off of that, you got to go back to it, the core. And I don't try to look at life in the rearview mirror, but I can't help in the last week or so to look back and say, can you imagine if I didn't open every press conference talking about Russia, and I could have been talking about healthcare or tax
Great
reform
point.
or
Great
infrastructure?
point.
Because at some point you would have actually had
And
to.
Sean, think about how much the Trump administration was able to accomplish despite the fact that you had these dark clouds looming over the White House, whether it be the Russian hoax with obviously the Steele dossier. The list went on and on. It was so much of a fight.
Let me jump
here.
in on this real fast, which is the thing that you just described is what they'll do to any national Republican they possibly can. We saw this in the House with Newt Gingrich, but if you look at every national Republican, since literally Richard Nixon was vice president, it's always about smearing the Republican in scandal, in an ethics dispute, treason. They accused President George Herbert Walker Bush of colluding with the mullahs to keep the hostages from getting out before Election Day in 1980, and then they accused him of, the whole Iran-Contra stuff. So, it's always the same thing, and I actually think it took Donald Trump to just say, I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to back down.
What Trump. I had this conversation with someone during the summer who was looking at writing one of these Trump books, and they said to me, "Why? What makes you like this guy in the sense that you've been involved in Republican politics?"
Right.
I said, "For finally somebody was willing to say no more and to stand up to, because think about it, even when Trump was attacked, all of these Republicans went and said, I'm glad Mueller's getting involved. He's a no-nonsense guy. They didn't stand up and say, there's no evidence. Too many of our own will fall, in line with the left and the media as soon as an accusation is made. They protect their own. And yet, why? And Trump said,
Great point.
Trump said, it was funny because he just kept saying, fine, barrel through. I don't care. I don't need them. And I had never seen somebody who was willing to just say, screw it, get the job done.
Now, Sean, just watching this, are you watching the Biden administration now? Are you surprised that they just shifted into, as what your book is called, Radical Nation, moved so quickly to the left?
Well, yes and no. Yes, because of how history is going, but no,
Right.
because they know if Republicans breathe and don't do something stupid and get in their own way, they will win back the House of Representatives. So if you're Biden and a student of history, I talk about a meeting that he had with all these liberal historians
Right.
early on. They know they have 12 months right now to get everything that they want done. And if they don't get it done, Republicans will take the House and it'll stop. So if you are on the left and want any of those top 10, 15 things done, even if you only get 3 or 4, this is your chance. You have
Right.
12 months, that's it. Get as much done as you can is their philosophy.
Okay, stay with us. We're in Friendsgiving time right now with Sean Spicer.
Let's get out there and do it, and let's be shepherds and not sheep. We have in this country 300 million patriots and not 300 million victims.
The White House used to be a symbol of power. Every day, it trends more and more to just looking like an assisted living facility.
Support Republicans so we can take the House back in 2022, because that is the single most important thing for us to be a check and balance of the craziness that's going on in Washington right now.
Welcome back to Thanksgiving Uncanceled, which is actually really a thing because they have canceled Thanksgiving. They've canceled Christmas. They've tried everything. By the way, we just never stopped. We just kept going.
You didn't ask permission. You didn't go, can we celebrate it? If you don't have a mask, you can't do this 3 times. You gotta get the booster, the Thanksgiving booster.
I mean, all I have to say is if I was a blood relative of Tony Fauci, I would like Thanksgiving to be canceled. Okay, so what do you, besides this great book, which is selling like hotcakes, what are you thankful for?
All the opportunities that I've had this year, obviously family, friends.
Family like you defined it, right?
Yeah,
the tight one.
well,
yeah.
I can't believe it.
Immediate and extended.
There you
but
go.
they're
we added
different.
extended.
They're different.
He knows. He knows.
But I'm also grateful for everything that's happened this year for folks on the right. I think that we have started to realize how to win again. You guys put on a great event in Orlando, and that really set the tone, which was we're not going to be canceled in Maryland. We're going to figure out how to win. And I think that we kept seeing people adapt. In Virginia, we kept hearing we can't win. We won.
Right.
And I think what it just shows is that if folks on the right are willing to fight, you think about all the people that were canceled on social media, and then we start hearing about Rumble and Parler and Truth Social and Getter. It's like people said, you know what? I'm not just going to get canceled. We're going to figure out how to do it. I'm grateful that the right is learning to say we're going to win again.
I like that. It's pushing back. It's, I
Yeah.
always say the David and Goliath perspective. And you have a great quote here. It says, it's going to take every one of us working together to rescue America from the Biden-Harris radical agenda. We need all hands on deck.
We
Which
do.
I think is such
We
a
should be, but
powerful
we've got to start
quote.
being on the right, willing to support each other. Like I'm sort of like, remember that old energy thing where it was just like, it's not wind and solar, it's all of the above, coal. And I think on the right, we got to be all of the above.
Right.
And so I love everyone that watches Newsmax, but if you watch another network and then flip over, whatever, that's great. I just want more people on the right to be successful. websites and events, and I just don't think there's enough. I think the more we can be supportive of each other, the better, because the left's goal is to cancel and silence us.
All right, we didn't ask you the converse. What are you not thankful for?
Well, I'm going to riff off of what you had said earlier, but I think that I'm ungrateful to the people, and I hate it's a tough thing that is ungrateful, but I'm
Like
sort
a
of
good Catholic.
yeah,
Like,
I know.
don't wanna
You
go
get
into
the
this
guilt
ungrateful
factor.
How about
thing.
super angry?
Or not pleased with. Folks who, in the media who distort what's happening. I think folks on the left that don't appreciate the greatness of this nation. It's amazing how many people flood here for its greatness and for an opportunity, and yet there are so many folks on the left that want to tear it down and talk about how it's a horrible place and systemically racist. And yet, at the end of the day, this is where we're still the beacon of hope and freedom around the world. And so I wish more people were grateful for that, is probably the best way to put it.
Well, we are grateful for your friendship.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate you guys leaving the back door unlocked all the time.
And we are grateful to all of those who are watching CPAC now, or what we're calling it, Thanksgiving Uncanceled. And we really hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. And remember, give this
Great
to one
Christmas
of your
gift.
liberal relatives, okay? So that they can learn a thing or two about the Biden-Harris administration. Radical Nation by Sean Spicer.